"You hear?" Judge Harrison Cole whispered, half turning toward me. His eyes flickered with disbelief. Or pity. I couldn't tell. I stood at the back of the courtroom like a ghost from a life I used to have. My shoes were worn, my coat too warm for the spring day, and my fingers trembled around the ivory handle of my mother's old umbrella, the one I'd carried out of my own house the night Sierra changed the locks. If you've ever been disrespected by someone you love, this story will speak to your heart. I didn't answer him right away. I just walked forward, my footsteps soft on the tile. Sierra sat at the front, perfectly polished. Her lips painted the same cruel red she used the day she told me, "You're not fit to manage anything anymore, Mother. You should rest." Rest. That's what they call it when they take everything from you and expect you to smile. The court was silent. The petition Sierra filed to take legal control over my estate was folded neatly in front of her. She didn't expect me to come. She thought I wouldn't dare. But I was there, and I had brought the truth with me. Judge Cole leaned forward. "Do you want to say something, Eleanor?" I looked at Sierra. Her hands were too still. "Yes," I said. "I have one thing to say, and I hope you're all ready to hear it." The last time I walked out of my own home, it was to the sound of Sierra's voice echoing down the hallway. "Leave the key on the table, Mother. It's not your house anymore." I remember how the hallway light flickered, how the air smelled faintly of her perfume, expensive, suffocating, and how my slippers scraped against the wood floor. I had packed only one small suitcase. "Just the essentials," she said, as if my life could be reduced to what fit inside a suitcase. That night I slept in my car for hours before I gathered the courage to call my friend Helen. Her guest room smelled like lavender and old books. That room saved my soul. Sierra had claimed she was protecting me. From myself, from decline, from mistakes I didn't even know I was making. But the truth came out in glimpses. I'd overhear her whispering with her fiancé in the kitchen. "Once she's out, we can renovate, sell. The old woman doesn't need all that space." Old woman. I had given birth in that house, buried my husband in that town. Every window held the memories I wasn't done living in. One night I found an old photo of Sierra at age 5, in pigtails holding a stick of cotton candy, her mouth wide open in a laugh. I held that photo in trembling hands and whispered, "Where did you go?" No one answered, only silence. I still remember the weight of that house key. Smooth brass, warm from my palm, the edges worn from years of turning. I had held it through storms, family dinners, birthday mornings, and lonely nights. It had opened the door to my entire adult life. Sierra didn't even look at me when I placed it on the hallway table. Her fingers tapped her phone, messaging someone, probably Miles, her fiancé. She said nothing. No goodbye, no thank you, Mother. Just that cold silence that settles when love has left the room. The key sat between a crystal vase and a porcelain bowl I'd bought on my honeymoon in Charleston. I noticed how the table was polished, the hallway mirror spotless. She had already begun preparing the house, her house, for guests, for showings, for a future without me in it. I should have taken the key with me, but I obeyed, out of habit, out of heartbreak. Later, Helen said, "You could have fought her then," and I had only nodded. I wasn't ready. Not yet. In the days that followed, I'd reach into my purse out of reflex and feel the absence of that key like a bruise. Doors matter. They say who's welcome and who's not. I never told Sierra, but that key was my mother's before me, passed down like a quiet kind of power. And now, it sat in a drawer under her lipstick and receipts, waiting. It was a Thursday when she called me into the living room, that room I once decorated with blue curtains and hand-stitched cushions. She stood near the fireplace, holding something behind her back like a schoolgirl with a secret. Then she showed it, the gold necklace. My necklace. "This doesn't really suit you anymore," she said, placing it flat on the coffee table like a serving of shame. "It's more modern now." and it looks better on me." I didn't answer, just stared at the delicate chain, a gift from my late husband on our 30th anniversary. He'd had it made with a tiny pearl, our daughter's birthstone nestled beneath it. It had rested against my throat through all those years of her childhood, her school plays, her tantrums and heartbreaks. Now it was hers, not through inheritance, through arrogance. "Don't look at me like that," she added, crossing her arms. "It's just a necklace." But it wasn't. It was the last thing he gave me before the cancer took him. He told me, "Wear this when you need to remember who you are." Sierra never asked for it, she just decided. After she left the room, I picked it up once more, held it to my heart. I didn't cry. I just stood there, breathing. That night, I tucked the chain inside an old envelope and wrote his name on it, Samuel Grace. Then I hid it in my purse. Something told me I'd need it again. There's a small wooden gate at the back of that house, the one Samuel built by hand when Sierra was still small enough to need lifting over puddles. Every Sunday, I used to prune the rose bushes there, humming hymns, watching the light shift across the garden like an old friend coming and going. It was my ritual, my peace. That Sunday, the last one I spent in that house, I was out there early. Gloves on, sleeves rolled up, a soft drizzle turning the earth into perfume. I didn't hear her come out, just felt her eyes on me. "You're still doing that?" Sierra asked flatly. "We're hiring a landscaper." I stood slowly. My knees ached. "The roses need hands that know them." She laughed, not kindly. "They're just plants, Mother. Like everything else around here, they need an update." She turned and walked back inside before I could speak. The gate creaked as it swayed behind her. That was when I knew. She wasn't trying to take care of me. She was trying to erase me. Later that afternoon, I clipped a single bloom and wrapped its stem in a wet towel. I didn't say goodbye to the garden, just to the version of myself that once believed love would always protect me. The rose dried in my purse, tucked beside the envelope with the necklace. A quiet rebellion, a memory that couldn't be landscaped away. The table was longer than we needed, always had been. But Sierra liked it that way, said it made the house feel important. That night, she and Miles invited friends over, some lawyer types and real estate people I didn't know. I stood at the kitchen doorway, wiping my hands on a towel, waiting for her to say, "Come sit, Mother." But she didn't. There were 6 place settings. I counted twice. Miles raised a glass. "To new beginnings," he said. Sierra smiled, her lipstick perfect, and to good decisions, even when they're hard. Everyone laughed, nodded, drank. I stayed silent. I didn't want to embarrass her. I told myself maybe she forgot. But then I saw it. My chair had been moved, not removed, just pushed far back, like a ghost still haunting the room. She caught my eye as she passed the wine. A flicker of guilt quickly buried. "I'll eat later," I murmured to Helen on the phone afterward. Wasn't really hungry, but I was. Not for food, for something else, for dignity. I went to the garden instead. Ate a cold slice of bread under the porch light. That's when the rose fell out of my purse. I picked it up, pressed it gently between the pages of an old hymnal I kept in the coat closet. That night I didn't sleep, and the next morning I called a lawyer. I wasn't snooping, I was dusting. The house may have stopped feeling like mine, but the rhythm of care still lived in my bones. Wipe, fold, straighten, breathe. It was in her desk drawer. A letter, half folded, written in Sierra's handwriting but never sealed, addressed to Miles. The sooner she's declared legally incompetent, the better. She's not dangerous, just confused. Once we take over, the property goes into both our names. I'll handle her. She won't resist much longer. There was more. Words that stuck like glass. She won't fight us. She still thinks this is love. I sat on the edge of her bed, the letter trembling in my hand. My breath came slow, shallow. The room smelled like lilacs and ambition. She'd already made her plans. I didn't cry, not yet. I folded the letter again, gently, like I was handling something sacred. Not because of what it said, but because of what it meant. That the daughter I raised was gone. Or maybe she was never who I believed she was. I took the letter and placed it inside the same envelope that held Samuel's necklace. My hands shook, but my mind was steady. There's a moment every woman feels it. The click inside, when pain sharpens into clarity. That was the moment mine did. And that was the moment I knew. I wasn't just leaving the house. I was walking towards something. His name was Arthur Levin. Retired now, but still sharp as wind in winter. His office was modest. Wood-paneled walls, a single photo of his late wife on the desk. No plaques, no fanfare. I held my purse in my lap like a shield. I'm not here for revenge, I said softly. I just want my life back. He nodded once, as if that was all he needed to hear. We talked. I showed him the letter, the petition Sierra filed, the list of medications she had told the court I forgot to take. Arthur read each word with calm intensity, the kind of stillness only grief can teach. Do you have any memory issues, Eleanor? I met his eyes. Only the kind I'd rather forget. He smiled, just a flicker. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a yellow legal pad. She's trying to file for full conservatorship, he explained. Wants control of all assets, including property and healthcare decisions. She already changed the locks, I whispered. Said I'd be more comfortable elsewhere. Arthur didn't rush to reassure me. He just listened, and I think that's why I trusted him. He didn't treat me like a victim. He treated me like someone whose story deserved to be told. Before I left, he said something that stayed with me. Ms. Grace, sometimes the truth needs a room full of silence before it can speak loud enough. I left that office standing a little taller. The courthouse steps were chipped, uneven, like time itself had been too heavy here. I stood at the bottom for a moment, watching people rush past in suits and heels, clutching folders, phones, power. I had none of that. Just a purse with a dried rose, a letter folded into thirds, and a necklace that once meant forever. As I walked up, I caught my reflection in the glass doors. For a second, I hesitated. The woman looking back at me had fine lines, silver streaks in her hair, and the quiet resolve of someone who'd learned how to endure. Inside, the air was too cold, the benches too hard. But I sat still, hands folded, my name soon to be called in a case I didn't start, for a life someone else tried to write over. Across the aisle, Sierra entered with Miles, their clothes crisp, their confidence louder than words. She looked at me once, just a glance, no smile, just calculation. Judge Harrison Cole entered. I remembered him from years ago, when Samuel and I had to sort out the zoning for the garden shed. Back then, he had hair. Now only gravity remained. Eleanor Grace, the clerk called. I stood. That's when the judge squinted toward the back. You here? He said, surprised. And I stepped forward, not as the woman they thought they'd erased, but as someone who finally knew her worth. Sierra always smiled when she needed something, a performance perfected over years of charm and calculation. That morning in the courtroom, her smile gleamed like glass, reflective, empty. When Judge Cole asked her to speak, she leaned in sweetly, tilting her head just enough to appear concerned. My mother has been showing signs of confusion, she began. She's misplaced things, repeats stories. She got lost on her own street last year. A lie, twisted from truth. I had gone walking after a migraine and stopped to rest by a neighbor's fence. She refuses her medication, Sierra continued, her voice delicate. And she gave away a large sum of money to a church that isn't even ours. I looked down. It had been a donation to a shelter where Helen volunteers, a place that feeds women whose names no one bothers to learn. The judge scribbled notes. I could feel the weight of Sierra's words building a case of shadows. She's not unsafe. Sierra concluded, folding her hands. Just not herself. Not herself. That phrase struck harder than all the others, because I was myself. Just older, quiet, not so easily tricked. And then Sierra looked at me, smiled again, that brittle, reflective grin. For years, I thought it was love I saw in her eyes. But that morning, I realized it was always approval she sought, not connection, not memory, just control. And for the first time, I didn't smile back. Judge Cole turned to me, his pen stilled in midair. "Mrs. Grace, do you wish to respond?" I rose slowly. The courtroom was quiet, too quiet. Even the air seemed to wait. I clutched the envelope tighter. Inside, the necklace shifted softly, like it knew its time had come. I didn't look at Sierra, not yet. I looked straight at the judge. "My name is Eleanor Grace," I began, voice low but steady. "I've been called a lot of things in this life. Wife, widow, mother, burden, but never confused. Not until my daughter said it often enough to make strangers believe it. No one moved. I forget things, yes, like where I left my glasses, like how to sleep through the night. But I remember the exact day my husband bought me this necklace." I opened the envelope slowly, holding it up by the chain. The pearl caught the light like a drop of old hope. I remember planting roses in the backyard barefoot. I remember teaching Sierra to read when she stuttered through her first book. I remember how she used to hold my hand at the doctor's office because she was afraid of needles. I paused, then looked at her. Finally. And I remember when she stopped needing me, not with words, with silence, with locked doors. The judge leaned back. No one dared interrupt. "My daughter didn't come here to protect me. She came to erase me." And my voice? It didn't tremble once. I unfolded the letter with care, like I was opening something sacred and dangerous all at once. "This was never mailed," I said, handing it to the clerk, who passed it up to Judge Cole. "But it was meant to be read." The courtroom air tightened. Judge Cole scanned the page, his brow furrowed. Then in a voice barely louder than a breath, he read aloud, "The sooner she's declared legally incompetent, the better. She's not dangerous, just confused. Once we take over, the property goes into both our names. I'll handle her. She won't resist much longer." A murmur rippled across the room. Sierra's face went pale, then flushed. Miles shifted in his seat, jaw tightening. I didn't gloat. I didn't even look at her. I just stood there, my hands folded, the necklace now resting against my chest like a memory reclaimed. "I didn't know she found that," Sierra said quickly. Her voice shook, and for the first time, it wasn't performance. Judge Cole set the letter down slowly. He looked at her, not like a judge, like a man disappointed. "You weren't protecting your mother," he said softly. "You were strategizing." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, righteous. And for the first time, Sierra had no words. My hands didn't tremble. I think some part of me had been waiting for this silence all my life. There's something final about a man looking away, not out of politeness, but shame. After the letter was read, Miles didn't say a word. He just stared at the table like it might split open and swallow him whole. His hand, once so proudly wrapped around Sierra's, now sat limp on his lap. That told me more than any confession. Sierra turned to him, her voice hushed but sharp. "Say something." He didn't, just shifted in his seat. His jaw clenched so tightly I could hear his teeth grind. It hit her then. Not the accusation, but the exposure. The illusion unraveling in front of strangers. Her plan, her poise, her pretty control slipping like sand through her fingers. She leaned toward him again. "You said you'd support me." He looked up finally, not at her, at me. "Mrs. Grace," he said quietly, "I'm sorry. It wasn't enough, but it was something." Sierra recoiled, her lips parted, ready to strike, but no words came. The mask was gone, and in its place was the frightened girl I once held during thunderstorms, who believed I could fix anything. but I couldn't fix this. I sat down slowly, my body aching in old places. The judge hadn't ruled yet, but the truth had landed. And truth, when spoken without rage or revenge, has its own gravity. I didn't need to win. I just needed them to stop pretending I didn't exist. Sierra stood again, this time without the usual grace. Her shoulders, once held high like a queen presiding over lesser hearts, now slumped slightly. Still, she tried to hold on to her narrative. "She's twisting this," she said, pointing toward me. "My mother always sees betrayal where there isn't any. She exaggerates. She's dramatic." The courtroom didn't move. "I wasn't trying to hurt her," she added, eyes darting to Judge Cole. "I was trying to help. She forgets things. She's not safe alone." "And you thought the best way to help was to take everything from her?" the judge asked. She faltered, just for a second, then said, "She left. She wasn't even sleeping in her own bed. She walked out." I inhaled deeply. "Because the locks were changed, Sierra." That's when her voice cracked. "She wouldn't listen," she snapped. "She wouldn't let me make things easier. She still acted like the house was hers, like she was still in charge." The courtroom held its breath. "She's my mother," she said, softer now, almost pleading. "But she just wouldn't let go." I finally turned toward her. Not with rage, not with vengeance, just sadness. "You don't let go of people, Sierra. You make room for them." It was then, for the first time, I saw something in her eyes that wasn't arrogance or calculation. I saw fear. Not of me, of what she'd become. Judge Cole leaned back in his chair, his fingers laced over his chest. He didn't speak for a long time, and no one dared break the silence. Even the court reporter had stopped typing, waiting, like the room itself needed to exhale. I could hear my heartbeat, slow, deliberate, alive. Sierra didn't sit down. She stood frozen, caught between shame and defiance, but she was wilting by the second. Miles still hadn't looked at her again. His hand rested on the table, but not for her. He was somewhere else now, maybe wondering who he'd promised his future to. Judge Cole finally exhaled. "There are moments," he said, "when the law isn't about signatures or statutes. It's about truth, dignity, who we choose to protect, and why." He looked at me. "Mrs. Grace, you may be older, but your mind is clear, your voice steady, and your story," he paused, eyes glancing towards the letter, "was buried beneath silence you never deserved." I swallowed hard. He turned to Sierra. "This petition is denied, and I strongly suggest you think carefully before filing anything like it again. No cheers, no clapping, just silence. The kind that seals a chapter, the kind that lets pain finally sit down and rest." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, but I also felt whole, like someone who'd just been handed back her own name. That silence? It was the sound of justice landing softly but firmly in its rightful place. After the ruling, people began to stand, shuffle, whisper. No one looked me in the eye, not even the ones who had nodded when Sierra spoke, who had believed her polished concern, her daughterly performance. I didn't wait for anyone. I stood, gathered my purse, and walked out. Sierra didn't follow. Miles stayed behind. It was strange. The hallway outside the courtroom smelled like lemons and old carpet. I had walked it many times in my younger years, filing forms, signing birth certificates, paying taxes. But this time, each step felt different. Each one said, "You are still here." I paused by a window at the end of the corridor. The sun had come out unexpectedly. A line of light spilled across the floor. I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope. The rose was still there, now completely dry. The petals fragile, curled inward, yet whole. I held it gently in my hand, then tucked it into my coat pocket. Not to hide it, but to keep it close. As I pushed open the courthouse doors, the wind greeted me like an old friend who'd been waiting outside, silent and faithful. No one walked beside me. No arms, no applause. Just my own shadow, long and steady in the afternoon sun, but it was enough. Because this time, I wasn't walking away from something. I was walking toward myself. That evening, I returned to Helen's little house, the one with lace curtains and a chipped tea kettle that sang off-key. She was waiting by the stove, soup simmering, eyes full of unspoken questions. But she didn't ask. She simply poured me a cup of tea and placed it on the table beside a linen napkin. No ceremony, just kindness. I reached into my coat and placed the dried rose in the center of the table. The petals had darkened, curled like pages of an old book left in the sun. It looked fragile, yet proud, like something that had held its shape through storms. Helen sat across from me, folded her hands. "It's over?" she asked gently. I nodded. "Was it ugly?" "No," I said. "It was honest." We ate in silence, spoonfuls, slow and warm. Outside, the wind rattled the windows gently. Nothing threatening, just the sound of change. After the meal, Helen took the rose and found a tiny glass bottle for it. She set it on the windowsill beside a candle. "That rose," she whispered, "came back stronger than any season it's lived through." I didn't answer. My heart was too full. I watched the flame flicker beside the flower, and I realized something. I didn't need to go back to that house, because the pieces of myself I had fought to keep, my voice, my memory, my name, were already here. And finally, they were safe. That night, long after Helen had gone to bed and the house had fallen into the hush only older homes know, the kind of silence that breathes, I sat by the kitchen window with a pen in hand. I opened a clean sheet of paper and simply wrote, "Dear Sierra." Then I paused. I stared at the ink, how it bled gently into the page, like truth finding its way through tight seams. I thought of the little girl who once curled up beside me during thunderstorms. The girl who couldn't sleep unless she heard me humming in the next room. Where had she gone? I could have filled the page with all the things she'd done. The betrayals, the lies, the dismissal wrapped in false concern. I could have listed them one by one like wounds still fresh. But instead, I wrote just this. You didn't have to destroy me to become someone. You could have asked for help. You could have been proud of me instead of ashamed. You're still my daughter, but I've stopped waiting for the girl I once knew to come back. I folded the letter carefully, placed it in an envelope, but I didn't seal it. I tucked it into the drawer beside Helen's tea bags. Not because I hoped she'd read it one day, but because I needed to write it. Some things aren't meant to be sent. They're meant to be said, if only to finally leave your own heart in peace. 2 weeks later, I saw Sierra again, not in court, not in anger, but at a funeral. Helen's sister, Ruth, had passed quietly in her sleep. The church was filled with soft murmurs, the smell of lilies, and the rustle of tissues tucked into wrinkled palms. I hadn't expected Sierra to come, but there she was, standing at the back in a gray coat, her hair pulled tight, eyes rimmed in red. She didn't approach me, not even during the service, but I felt her presence like a shadow at my shoulder. Not cruel, just distant. Not a daughter, not yet. After the final hymn, as people gathered in the small church garden, Sierra stepped out alone. She didn't speak to anyone, just stood near a stone bench, staring at the winter bare trees. I walked past her. I wasn't sure if she saw me. I wasn't ready for a scene. And she didn't make one. But as I passed, she whispered, barely, "Do you hate me?" I paused. There were 1,000 answers I could have given. But I just looked at her and said, "I don't carry hate, Sierra. It's too heavy." She nodded once. Her eyes shimmered, but no tears fell. We said nothing more. That moment wasn't a beginning, and it wasn't closure. It was something in between, like the hush between two verses of a song that hasn't decided yet whether to end or begin again. Back at Helen's house, I sat by the fireplace, staring at the envelope that held the letter I'd written to Sierra. My fingers brushed the seal. I still hadn't closed it. Forgiveness isn't a door you walk through once. It's a hallway you revisit again and again, deciding each time not to lock it behind you. I had expected that seeing Sierra might spark something inside me. Anger, grief, a storm. But instead, all I felt was quiet. Not the silence of rejection, the silence of release. She had asked if I hated her and I hadn't lied. I didn't. Not because what she did wasn't cruel, but because holding on to hate meant keeping myself inside the same story, the one where I was always the victim and she the villain. But life is more complicated than courtrooms and confessions. I folded the letter again and finally sealed it, not to send, but to close the moment. Then I opened the drawer and placed it beneath the hymnal, beside the dried rose and the photo of her at 5 years old, cotton candy in her hand, laughter frozen in a time before everything turned. Helen came in carrying tea. She didn't speak, just sat beside me and passed the cup. And in that silence I felt something soften. Not my memory, not my pride, but the ache that had lived too long without a name. That ache now had one: peace. Spring arrived like an apology. Shy sunlight, warm breezes, buds slowly daring to open again. One morning, Helen handed me a small envelope. No stamp, just my name in Sierra's handwriting. Inside was a photograph. The garden, my garden. The rose bushes had bloomed early, their reds and pinks vivid against the old fence. But what caught my breath was what stood beside them. The small wooden gate, freshly painted, the same one Samuel built, and hanging from its latch, the brass house key, tied with a ribbon. My ribbon! The one I used to wear in my hair on Sundays. No note, no explanations. Just a photo and that image, a quiet offering. Helen looked at me. She didn't write anything. I shook my head, but it was enough. Because this time, she hadn't spoken to convince, to control, or to accuse. She had spoken in silence. And silence, when it's honest, says more than words. I placed the photo on the mantel, beside the candle and the dried rose. My fingers lingered on the edges, soft and trembling. I didn't rush to call her. Some bridges don't need to be rebuilt overnight. Some just need to be seen still standing. And that image, that key left for me, was her first real act of humility. I lit the candle that evening and whispered aloud just once into the gentle hush of the room, "Thank you." It was dusk when the phone rang. I was folding laundry, nothing fancy, just soft towels and my favorite sweater, the one Samuel always said brought out my eyes. I almost didn't answer. But something in the ring, hesitant, uncertain, pulled me to it. "Hello?" A pause. Then, "Hi, Mom." Just 2 words, small, raw. I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. The room felt suddenly fuller, like memory had entered and taken a seat. "I don't know what to say," Sierra continued, her voice bare. "No performance, no gloss. I saw the roses, they're still blooming." I closed my eyes. "They're survivors, like some women I know." Another pause, longer this time. "I don't expect you to forgive me. Not yet. Maybe not ever." I didn't answer, not because I couldn't, but because forgiveness isn't something you declare. It's something you live. "I just wanted you to know," she added, voice thinner now, "that I see what I did. I see it all." And for the first time, I believed her, not because she said the right thing, but because she didn't try to fix it. She just let it be broken in front of me. "I'm still your daughter," she whispered. "If you'll still have me." I held the phone to my heart for a moment before answering. "You always were." A week later, Sierra came for dinner. Not at the old house, at Helen's. She brought a pie, store-bought, awkwardly boxed, but carefully chosen. "Apple," she said, holding it out like an offering. "You used to make this every fall." "I still do," I said gently, taking it from her. "But thank you." We set the table together. No place cards, no drama, just plates and silverware, passed hand to hand. Helen lit a candle, then made herself scarce, with a wink and a soft, "I'll be in the garden." It was just us now. Sierra sat across from me. No Miles, no papers, no tension humming in the walls. Just a daughter trying to relearn the shape of her mother's face. "I lied to them," she said halfway through dinner. "To the court, to Miles, to myself. I didn't speak. Just let her unravel. I told myself I was protecting you, but really, I was embarrassed by how small our world had become, by how much you still mattered." I reached for my water, sipped slowly. "We all want to matter, Sierra, but not at the cost of someone else's breath." She looked down, then nodded. "I don't deserve this meal," she whispered. "But you're here," I said. "And that counts for something." We didn't toast. We didn't hug. But when she took a second helping of soup and said, "It tastes like home," I felt something shift, not fixed, but no longer broken beyond repair. 3 days later, I found a small velvet box on the porch. No card, no knock, just the morning sun warming it like it had waited all night. I knew what it was before I opened it. The necklace, Samuel's necklace. The pearl glowed soft in the early light, the chain carefully polished. I could see the faint scratches still, not flaws, but memories. Every clasp, every moment it had rested against my skin, remembered in gold. I sat down on the porch steps, holding it in my palm. It was heavier than I remembered. Not in weight, in meaning. She hadn't tried to explain, hadn't asked for acknowledgement. She had simply returned it, the way someone gives back what was never truly theirs. And that mattered. I placed it around my neck slowly, letting the pearl settle into its familiar place above my heart. My fingers brushed against it, and I breathed in, not with pain, but peace. Forgiveness had never been about forgetting. It was about reclaiming what was mine, my name, my memory, my dignity. And now, my necklace. I looked out over the yard. The light filtered through the trees like it had when Samuel used to read beside me on quiet mornings. I whispered into the breeze, "I kept it safe, Sam, even when she didn't know what it meant. I kept it safe. And now it was home again." It was a month later when the envelope arrived, this time certified. No games, no surprises. Inside was a formal letter, signed and notarized. The deed to the house had been returned to my name. No conditions, no requests, just a signature, Sierra's. Helen held the letter as I read it aloud. Neither of us spoke at first. The silence wasn't shock, it was reverence. "She did it," Helen finally said, voice soft. I nodded, my fingers tracing the edges of the paper like it might disappear. She gave it back. Not just the house, the choice, the respect, the space to decide if I ever wanted to return. A week later, I did. I walked up the path slowly, pausing at the gate, freshly painted again, the same shade of white Samuel had once used. The garden, though a little wild, was blooming. At the door, I reached into my coat pocket. The brass key was still there. I slid it into the lock. It turned. The click wasn't loud, but it echoed inside me like a hymn. I stepped in. The air smelled faintly of lavender and old floors. The rooms were empty, not just of furniture, but of resentment. It felt like a space waiting to forgive. I stood in the doorway for a long time, letting memory move through me like light. This wasn't a return to the past. It was the beginning of something new. And this time, I had the key. Sierra came by one evening just before sunset. I saw her from the kitchen window, standing by the gate like someone waiting for a verdict. She didn't wave, she didn't call out, she just waited. I opened the door, but didn't step out. Instead, I watched her take the porch steps slowly, almost reverently, like she knew what this ground had cost me. She sat on the top step, not asking to come inside, not pushing past the silence. "I know it's not my place anymore," she said. "I'm not here for anything." I said nothing. She pulled something from her coat pocket, a photograph, worn, folded at the corners. She turned it toward me. It was us. Years ago, I was braiding her hair on the front porch. Her eyes squinted from the sun, my hand mid-motion. "You used to hum while you braided," she said. "I didn't remember that until last week." I stepped out, finally, sat beside her. The boards creaked beneath us like they remembered too. "I used to think you were indestructible," she said, voice trembling. "That's why I didn't think I was hurting you. I thought you'd always forgive me." I looked out at the roses. "Forgiveness isn't something you earn by being forgiven. It's something you respect by never needing again." She nodded, and we sat like that, side by side. Not as mother and daughter, not yet, but as two women, finally quiet in the same truth. Inside the house, there's a blue armchair in the corner of the living room. Soft corduroy, with a wooden arm Samuel carved initials into when Sierra was 6. He did it after she spilled juice all over it and sobbed like the world had ended. I never replaced it. The cushion still held the shape of my body, even after weeks away. It was a quiet invitation, a space that had waited. That morning after Sierra left, I sat there again. I didn't do anything. No music, no tea, no journal. Just sat. Sunlight warmed the floorboards, casting long golden lines across the room. The silence wasn't empty this time. It was peaceful. I looked around, at the faded family photos, the lace curtains, the chipped baseboard Samuel never got around to fixing. Every imperfection held a story. Every worn edge, a memory. I let my fingers trail over the arm of the chair, right where the carving was. SG plus EG. Still here. It struck me then. This house was never about the deed or the locks. It was about belonging, not to a place, but to myself. And now, I did. This chair, this room, this life. They didn't need to be earned back. They had always been mine. I closed my eyes and let the weight of that truth settle. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was holding on. I felt like I had arrived. It wasn't planned. Most things that matter never are. Sierra called one afternoon and asked if she could bring lunch. Nothing fancy, just sandwiches from the cafe downtown and a thermos of coffee. I said yes. She arrived quietly, no fanfare, no makeup, just jeans and a sweater that used to be mine. We sat outside on the back porch, the sun falling gently through the branches above, our shoes touching beneath the table like they used to when she was small, and reached for me without even thinking. She told me about her job, about how Miles had moved out, about how she didn't know who she was without someone needing her to be something. "I don't think I ever learned how to just be," she said, sipping her coffee. I reached for her hand, not to comfort her, but to remind her, "You're still here." And then something strange happened. She laughed, not politely, not nervously, a real laugh. Quick and sudden, like a forgotten melody returning to the air. It startled both of us. She pressed her hand to her mouth, eyes wide. "I haven't laughed like that in, I don't know how long." I smiled. "I do. You were 10. You spilled orange soda all over your science project and said, 'Maybe it needed a little sunshine.'" She burst out laughing again, freer this time. The porch echoed with it, a sound I hadn't realized I missed until it came back. And for a moment, it was just two women in the light. The garden had grown wild, vines tangled where they didn't belong, and weeds pushed up through the stone path. But the roses, oh, the roses, they had survived. That morning I put on Samuel's old flannel shirt, rolled up my sleeves, and walked out with gloves and shears in hand. Sierra joined me just after breakfast. She didn't ask what to do. She just followed my lead, kneeling beside me, hands in the dirt, quiet. We didn't talk much. It wasn't about words anymore. It was about rebuilding with small gestures, cutting back what no longer served, clearing space for new growth, tending roots that had waited in silence. At one point, Sierra pulled out a stubborn clump of ivy and sighed. "It's harder than it looks." I smiled. "The hardest parts are always under the surface." She looked up at me then, her cheeks smudged with earth, hair clinging to her forehead. And I saw it. Not guilt, not pride, willingness. To stay, to do the work. I handed her a new rose bush, one I'd been keeping in a pot since before the hearing. "Let's plant this one together," I said. She took it without hesitation. We dug, we placed it, we covered the roots with soil. And when we finished, we sat back on our heels and looked at what we'd done. Not perfect, but planted, growing, and this time, we'd both be here to tend it. That Sunday, I cooked again. Roast chicken, garlic potatoes, the kind of meal that fills a house with memory before you even taste a bite. I set the table like I used to. No occasion, no guests, just a ritual of love that had once been mine alone. Sierra arrived with a pie, homemade this time. Her hands were flour-dusted, and there was a smudge of something sweet on her cheek. She didn't apologize. I didn't offer a napkin. We just laughed. Helen joined us too, wearing her good cardigan and bringing the hymnal where the dried rose still lived, pressed between pages. We lit candles. We passed bread. And for the first time in years, there was no tension, no performance, just forks clinking softly, steam rising from the dishes, and conversation that didn't walk on eggshells. After the meal, Sierra stood up quietly and reached for the necklace around my neck. "May I?" she asked. I nodded, unsure. She unfastened it gently and placed it back around my neck, clasping it with reverence. "I want to give it to you properly this time," she whispered. My throat tightened, but I smiled. We held hands around the table afterward, not to pray, but to feel connected. 3 women, weathered but still standing. The candlelight flickered across the walls like stained glass, and in that moment I didn't miss the past, because the present, in its softness, felt holy. I found it while sorting through a box in the attic, the original copy of that photo Sierra had once shown me. Her on the porch at 5 years old, laughing mid-bite into a swirl of cotton candy, one shoe missing, hair wild from the wind. Back then, I never framed it. I tucked it away, thinking there would be better pictures, more polished to memories. But this one, this imperfect, unposed moment, held something nothing else did. Joy before expectation. I brought it down, wiped off the dust, and placed it in a wooden frame Samuel had carved years ago. The edges were chipped, but I liked that. It matched the story. I set it on the mantel, beside the rose bottle and a candle that now burned most evenings. Sierra saw it the next time she visited. She paused. "You kept that?" "I kept everything," I said gently. "I just forgot how to look at it without hurt." She stood beside me, arms folded. Her voice was small. I miss that girl sometimes. I looked at her, really looked. She's still in there. She's just learning how to laugh again. Sierra smiled. Not big, not performative, just soft. She placed her hand on my arm and said, "So am I." We stood like that for a long moment, not rushing to fill the silence. The photo stayed, not as a memory of what was lost, but as proof of what can be found again. It was early evening when I returned alone to the garden. The roses had begun their slow fade, not dying, just preparing to rest. Autumn always made the light feel older, like it too had stories to carry. I sat on the wooden bench beside the gate Samuel built. I hadn't visited that spot in a few days. Life had felt fuller again. Meals with Sierra, long talks with Helen, mornings with coffee that didn't taste like grief. But that evening, I needed stillness. I pulled my shawl tighter around my shoulders and closed my eyes. And in the rustle of leaves, I heard it. Not words, not ghosts, but memory. Samuel's laugh, faint and low, echoing from a time when joy came easier. His voice calling Sierra to come inside, his footsteps crunching on gravel. The sound of his whistling, off-key, always the same tune. My hand went instinctively to the necklace. "I wish you could see her now," I whispered. And in the pause that followed, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not sadness, not longing, but presence. I didn't believe in signs, but I did believe in echoes. And that day, the garden didn't feel empty. It felt like a page being gently turned. I placed my hand on the soil, warm from the fading sun. "She's trying, Sam. She's really trying." The wind passed again, gentle, approving. And I knew, somehow, he'd heard me. It was on a Wednesday. Nothing remarkable about the day. The sky was pale. The tea was steeping. Sierra came over unannounced. She didn't knock this time. Just stepped in softly like someone who'd finally remembered they had permission. We sat at the table with matching mugs, the same ones she used as a teenager. Her fingers traced the rim, her eyes searching for courage. Then she said it. "I was jealous of you." The words hung there untouched. "I watched you take care of everything, everyone. You were the sun in every room. I wanted to be like that. But I didn't know how to be close to you without feeling small." She wasn't crying. Her voice didn't shake. It was the kind of truth you tell when you're not trying to be forgiven, only understood. "I thought control would make me feel powerful," she said. "But all it did was make me feel alone." I didn't speak. I let her finish. "I lost so much time with you, Mom, and I don't deserve to ask for more. But I'm here, if you'll let me be." I reached across the table and took her hand. Not as a reward, as a response. Because sometimes, love isn't in the grand gestures. It's in the willingness to sit in the same room with the truth and not flinch. And that day, we didn't. We just held hands, tea cooling, silence blooming between us like forgiveness in the spring. One afternoon, I went back to the courthouse. Not for a case, not for revenge. Just to return a file Arthur Levin had asked me to review. A formality tied to the estate, now clean and clear. The building looked smaller this time, less like a battlefield, more like a building. I walked through the hallways with calm steps, the kind that come when you know who you are and what you've lived through. As I handed the folder to the clerk, Judge Harrison Cole stepped out of his chambers. His face softened when he saw me. "Mrs. Grace," he said, with that low, steady voice. "You look well." I nodded. "I am." He paused, then leaned closer. "You did more than survive, you know." I smiled. Not wide, just enough. I didn't do it alone. He watched me for a beat, then said the words I never thought I'd hear from someone who had once doubted me. "You reminded us all what dignity looks like." I didn't respond. Just placed my hand over my necklace, Samuel's necklace, and nodded. As I turned and walked back toward the doors, the air felt warm. Light filtered through the high windows, soft and golden. I reached the exit, looked back once, and then pushed the door open. It closed gently behind me. No slam, no finality. Just the soft sound of something ending without anger. And something else. Something better. Beginning again. On my birthday, a small envelope appeared on the windowsill, propped against the glass beside the rose bottle and the photo of Sierra as a child. I knew the handwriting before I even touched it. Inside was a simple card. No glitter, no poems, just cream paper with gold edges and a few short lines written in her new, careful script. "Happy birthday, Mom. I didn't buy you anything this year. I figured it was time to stop giving and start growing. So here's what I promise. I'll keep showing up, with clean hands, quiet intentions, and space in my heart for the truth. If that's enough, I'll see you for dinner." I read it twice, then once more. No apology, no grand gesture, just presence, earned and ongoing. I placed the card gently beneath the necklace box, beside the sealed letter I never mailed. The one that had once been written in pain, now softened by time. That evening she came, with soup in one hand and the pie from the cafe in the other. We didn't say happy birthday with confetti, We said it by sitting down, passing bread, and lighting a candle. No need to make it bigger than it was, because birthdays aren't about gifts. They're about who comes back after the storm and stays. And that night, her seat at the table was no longer a question. It was hers again. Some Sundays are for storytelling, but this one wasn't. Sierra came over in the late morning with flowers. Not roses this time, but marigolds. Bright, stubborn little things that thrive in rough soil. She said they reminded her of me. We baked bread together. I showed her how to test the dough with just the press of a fingertip, how to listen for the hollow sound when it's ready. She didn't talk about the past. Neither did I. We didn't mention courtrooms or keys or letters folded in pain. Instead, we talked about herbs for the garden. She asked if I'd ever thought about raising chickens. I told her only if she promised to clean the coop. We laughed. It was the kind of laughter that doesn't need to be earned or explained, just lived. Later, as the bread cooled on the rack and the windows let in that golden hush that only Sundays know, Sierra reached over and took my hand. She didn't speak, and she didn't need to. Because sometimes healing isn't loud. It doesn't march or sing. It needs dough. It watches light move across the floor. It listens. That Sunday, we didn't dig through old wounds. We didn't ask for forgiveness in words. We just made bread. And in that warmth, in that stillness, something new began to rise. Not to replace what was lost, but to nourish what remained. I watched from the window, not spying, just witnessing. Sierra had arrived earlier than usual, let herself into the shed, and come out with the old watering can, the one Samuel patched twice with tin and stubbornness. She didn't call for me, didn't knock. She walked slowly through the garden, pausing at each rose bush, each patch of herbs, touching the leaves like they were names she'd forgotten but wanted to learn again. She watered gently, not just to feed, to tend. I sipped my tea in silence, the window slightly ajar, so I could hear the soft splash of water hitting soil. Then I saw her kneel, at the base of the newest rose bush, the one we planted together. She placed her hand on the earth, held it there for a while. Her head bowed, but not in shame, in reverence. It wasn't performance. No one else was watching. She didn't know I was there. This wasn't about guilt anymore. This was care. She stayed out there for almost an hour. When she came inside, her hands were covered in dirt, her cheeks flushed from the sun. "I watered everything," she said softly. I nodded. I saw. She looked at me, then smiled. "I'll come back tomorrow, if that's okay." I didn't answer right away. I just handed her the old towel I used for the garden, the one with Samuel's initials still stitched in the corner. She took it, grateful, and the silence said yes. That evening, as the sun bowed low behind the trees, Sierra stood at the garden gate, the same one she once dismissed as outdated, the one she'd once walked through without looking back. She didn't knock. She didn't call out. She just opened it, carefully, slowly, with both hands. I was sitting on the porch, my shawl wrapped around my shoulders, a book in my lap I wasn't reading. When she stepped through, she didn't speak. She didn't have to, because this act of opening said more than any apology ever could. She walked the path barefoot, her steps soft, like she understood that this wasn't just earth. It was memory, and she treated it with care. When she reached the porch, she looked up and asked, "May I sit?" I moved over, patted the spot beside me. She sat, and for a while, we said nothing. The air between us was quiet, but not heavy. She reached down and touched the wooden slats beneath her. "I used to sit here after school," she said. "Sometimes I'd wait for you to come out. Sometimes I just waited. I was always here," I whispered. "I know that now." We sat until the sky turned lavender and the porch light clicked on. She didn't rush to leave, and when she did, she closed the gate gently behind her, the same gate she once slammed, the same gate that now waited and welcomed. That night after she left, I walked through the house in the quiet. The dishes were still drying. The chair by the window held the shawl I'd left behind. The air smelled faintly of rosemary from the soup we'd made together without planning to. I passed by the mantel, the rose in its glass bottle, the photograph of her laughing with cotton candy, the card from my birthday, unopened now but memorized, everything still, everything mine. Before bed, I turned on the lamp by the porch window, the one Samuel bought for me when we first moved in. "So you'll always have a little light when it gets dark," he'd said. I used to turn it off before sleeping, but not tonight. Tonight, I let it glow. Let it spill soft light across the window pane, across the hallway, across the walls that had once held my silence and now held my truth. I stood there for a while, just breathing, and I realized I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. Not for an apology, not for time to rewind, not for love to return in the shape I remembered, because it had come back differently, softer, real, earned. I looked out through the window, where the gate now stood quiet and open, where the path was worn gently from her new footsteps. The light stayed on all night. Not because I was afraid of the dark, but because sometimes love is simply the decision to leave the light on. Spring returned quietly. No announcement, no fireworks. Just buds nudging open, the air sweetening and the soil soft enough to kneel in again. Sierra arrived early that morning. No bouquet, no basket, just herself. Sleeves rolled, cheeks kissed by sleep, eyes ready. She didn't ask what needed doing. She went straight to the roses. She knelt where Samuel used to, dug with care, loosened roots, trimmed dead leaves. She knew them now, each stem, each thorn. She worked with the patience of someone who'd learned that some things can't be forced, only nurtured. I watched her from the steps, not hovering, just present. She looked up at me once, wiped her brow, and smiled. A smile without guilt, without fear, just peace. By noon, the sun stretched wide across the yard, touching everything. The new rose, the one we planted together, had opened in full, bright, bold, a little imperfect, but blooming. Sierra stood, brushed off her knees, and walked to where I sat. "I want to plant one more," she said. "Just there, by the gate." I nodded. "For what?" "For what comes next," she said softly. We knelt together, side by side. Our hands moved in rhythm, no longer across a divide, but in union. The dirt was warm, the roots were ready. The bloom would take time, but it would come. And as we finished, I looked out over the garden. It was no longer a place of memory. It was a place of beginning.